It's the Out the Box Rugby podcast with André Pretorius and Welman, only on MEGAFOON Rugby.
Welcome to the Out the Box Rugby podcast with former Springbok flyhalf André Pretorius, nowadays a coach in Japan. But before we get to the discussion, remember that we now have a dedicated Afrikaans rugby channel called Rugby. The link to this channel is in the description down below and also in the pinned comment. Make sure you subscribe to both our channels and make sure that you check that you're subscribed. Often people think that they are subscribed and then they find out that they're actually not. So without any further ado, over to André. Welcome back, André. I'm in the Drakensberg still, as you can see, and a little bit out of my comfort zone, but nothing compared to being in Japan, I suppose.
Hi, Emvia. You look nice and refreshed. I'm sitting here being quite jealous of that view in front of you.
Yeah, I actually wanted to do the other way around, but the light is just simply too bright. You wouldn't have seen me anything. It would have looked like a shadow sitting in there. Anyway.
Carte Blanche interview.
Yeah, anonymous voice. I was just disguise your voice. I think when we're done here, probably with the two coaches will not be that happy with us anyway. So maybe it's not a bad idea to do it anonymously. Talking about that, we're going to talk about this big derby coming up this weekend, the Lions versus the Bulls at Ellis Park. Last year, the Bulls won both games. The Lions just, Jordan Hendrickson, when he was still a Lion, missed that last kick, different to what he did in the Currie Cup final. So the Lions have a lot to prove, and I was thinking we could talk about that. And I was going to ask you, you're the coach of both those teams today. Firstly, you have to wear your red cap as a Lions coach. Secondly, you have to wear your blue cap as a Bulls coach. How would you go about it? Just go into the details where each team is good at, what they're good at, what they're not that good at, and how would you approach it? Let's start with the Lions.
Yeah, NBA, it's quite difficult to start at a particular point. So what I've done is I've had a look at the Lions in terms of what they've shown in the last couple of games and what's worked against them. And the one thing that they really rely on and depend on and try and create is chaos at the tackle situation. The more dominant the tackle, the more chaos they can create, the slower the ball, the better the setting, and then they can kind of repeat that scenario as many times as needed until they get a turnover. And they focus on getting a lot of jackal attempts. So they're knocking on a lot of doors, hoping that, more probability of doors opening up. So their tackle situation, collision, there's a big focus on that. And what's been happening is teams that it's very effective for the offloading against them tend to have less rucks, keep the ball alive, so the Lions can't get set. They can't put pressure on the ruck. It's less dominant hits, and it just snowballs into chasing leather. And you'll see against Montpellier, there was a try that got chalked off, I think 2 tries actually, where one of them was a couple of offloads in a row. And there was an unfortunate incident where the attacker actually tackled the defender and prevented him from making a tackle. But that's besides the point. So when teams offload well against the Lions, they put them under a lot of pressure. They keep the ball alive, and which means you don't get those chaotic situations at the ruck, chance for breakdown turnovers, and which means that the Lions are just chasing leather, getting into bad settings, and inevitably they concede the tries. Whereas if they get into nice close quarter defense, double hits, no offloads, they get around the corner early, they set quickly, and then you actually see a bit of line speed, which puts the opposition under skill set pressure, which makes it difficult to get the ball wide. Which brings me to my second point. I think if you look at what Montpellier did and what the Stormers did against them, is they had really good vision in playing where the Lions were softer, so that either use the blind, where the Lions have got a soft defense on that phase, or they play out the back and they get around the corner. And that's where the offloads actually come from within that play. And that's when the Lions start chasing the ball. So I think for the Lions, controlling offloads is going to be a big key for them in containing the Bulls' attack.
Yeah, you mentioned the Bulls we were masters of the offload against the Stade Francais last weekend, and that's going to be a big headache for the Lions. If you're the Lions coach now, like we're hypothetically speaking, yeah, what would you do to be able to counter the offloads? Can you counter them, and what would you do differently?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to try and counter offloading. I think one of the ways is to prevent the ball from getting to the outside, which means that you're going to have to defend with a really high edge, get your wings outside centers, loosies on the outside, getting in the eye line of the ball player early, make him tuck, make him play short, and keep them in that middle corridor where you're making double hits. Making double hits means that you've got less offloads to worry about. But if they get onto the outside of your corner, it's probably leg chops from behind. It means that their arms are available, and that puts away that gets them into those offload situations, and then you're not setting, especially on the edge rucks. And one offload leads to another. Montpellier showed it. One offload leads to one more offload, leads to a quick ruck, pick and go, another offload, and you just never get set.
Yeah, you talked about double shoulders last time. What exactly does that mean? A double leader, I can understand. Two guys tackle the same player. Well, what's double shoulder mean?
I think it's just the terminology. It's exactly that, and you get. I think the most effective double shoulder technique is the chop and top, where you get in. First guy gets in low, stops the momentum. Second guy gets in on top, and he stops the offload, but he's also steering that tackle back towards where they came from. So you want to ensure that you want to drive them back. So that the guy getting in second and getting on the top, he's steering that tackle into back to where they came from. And then another thing you can look at controlling offloads is you have to have good awareness of where you are in the defense line. If you're going past the ball, you need to realize that there's threats going towards the ball, and you need to turn on that ball. You need to go and close that space early. You'll see some players, once they've gone past the ball, they kind of switch off, and that's where attack pounces. That's where they get that ball into the space, and they get one more offload, and now you're struggling to get one more ruck to get set.
Talk about the Lions now being such a good breakdown team. They like chaos. So they go in for the double tackle, and then they try and win the ball back. If I'm understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it takes a lot of discipline, because the JC Pretorius is not waiting for guys to roll away. If he gets an opportunity, he's going in. So it takes a lot of discipline, having two bodies in that space, getting out of the way, then having someone get onto the ball. The risk is you're putting three bodies into that ruck. And if you're not having an effect, you're taking three bodies out of the defense, which makes your corners narrow, which opens up kick space at the back. So once you get into that situation, you need to be really effective and have an effect.
And your corners narrow, what does that mean?
The corner is the last defender in your front line. So it'll probably be, if you've got a 13-2 defense, let's say you've got 10 and 15 defending at the back, your two wings will then be your corners. The wider they stay, the more in control your defense is. It means that you're slowing ball, you're getting good folds, you're getting good numbers on the side that they're playing towards. If your corners get narrow, it means that you're not slowing ball down. You're losing numbers, and it means that you're very vulnerable on the wide channels, and that's what the Lions have got to be careful of.
And now let's put the shoe on the other foot now. You're the Bulls defending, and the Lions are attacking. The Bulls probably do something similar. But we noticed from last week's game against Stade Francais, the Bulls had 13 defensive turnovers, and the Lions only had 5. If you're the Bulls now, how did they manage to do that? How did they get so effective? I mean, I can't really think. It was Marcel and Elrich and Cameron Hanekom in the loose trio. Why were they so successful in getting that many turnovers?
There could be various reasons for that. One of the reasons, I think, is the fact that Stade Francais was under pressure from the word go. So they were playing against the scoreboard. They needed to force a couple of plays, which takes you out of your shape. Once you get out of your shape, if your one-man or your two-man pod, if your one cleaner is not effective, there's going to be a jackal on there and you're probably going to lose that ball. So that's the one reason. The other reason I think is the Bulls have the ability to defend for long stretches, long ranges, which also puts teams into a position where they can lose shape, and that can increase your probability of getting onto a ball and turning the ball over.
Now, we've talked a lot about the Lions' defense. Jukskei's sort of managed to get them to be a pretty good defensive team. But we talked about this before. You said to me, you think that some of the teams, or most of the teams, have figured out how the Lions defend. How exactly do they defend, and how are they getting around it? What have they now sort of figured out that you referred to?
I think it's where the focus lies, Envia. Jark has got them to be really aggressive, really physical. They get into position early. I remember last season they played Benetton. That one video clip still plays in my mind where, they've pretty much, the game was done and dusted, and they were still trying to prevent tries in the end of the game, which just shows what type of defense culture Jark has created. But if you put your eggs into one basket and that doesn't come off on the day, there needs to be some, a form of a plan B. And, you might get a ref on the day that's just not rewarding the jackal. And you keep on putting 3 bodies in there, and all you're doing is putting your corners under pressure. Go back, go to green rucks. A lot of teams call it green rucks. Just for 10 minutes, try and just have 15 men on feet, keep your connection, and see if you can't create something through that. So I think what's the Stormers did it well. They played around the corners of the Lions. They stayed away from those midfield corridors where the Lions were waiting to swallow them. And once you do get around them and they battle to set, it also takes away a bit of their line speed. And this is going to sound very counterintuitive, but if your attack's functioning well, if you're doing well against the defense, you're getting gain line success, kick space becomes a lot easier to take because they have to insert players on the edges because you're getting around their corners, which means that their backfield defenders are in. So somewhere something's opening up. So it's easier to kick there than to run there. So a lot of options opens up when you do take that space on the edge and you get an offload away, you make their backfield defenders tackle. It means that the cover from the other side have got to go around, which means that the corner on this side is then dropping back, which makes their corner even narrower. So there's a whole series of events that occurs once you do get into that wide space. And again, I think if the Lions can prevent that from happening, they'll be in good positions to defend for long phases and to get those turnover opportunities.
Now, we're not sure who the teams are, but you mentioned to me that you were quite impressed with Sam Francis, the Lions number 10. You talked about kicking, and I saw both those teams against the opposition last week. They kicked the leather off the ball. I think the Lions kicked almost 800 meters. The Bulls kicked 750 meters. Is that a good enough 10 to do what you're talking about now? Does he have the vision to do those kind of big kick passes, probing kicks, finding open spaces?
Emmy, I really I enjoy the way he plays. He doesn't look like a physical 10, yet his skills within the contact situation is silky smooth. He steps off both feet. He gets a fend out. He can offload. He kicks the ball a mile. He makes good decisions. He's not afraid to try things. So I think he's definitely a player for the future, and definitely someone that can and probably will take control of the game at some stage. It just depends on do they reward themselves from that control, or do they give the ball back to the Bulls?
Okay, we talked about defense. Now let's talk about the Bulls defense while we're at it. Your friend John Teed is the Bulls defense coach. Things are not working that well. But I mean, it wasn't bad last week because Staatfontein didn't send their best team. But do you think the Bulls defense are up to scratch? Is getting better now, or what kind of defense are they employing, and what can they do better? And if you were the Lions coach, how would you attack them?
I think with the Bulls, there's a certain predictability with that comes with the Bulls. That you will be receiving high ball kicks, box kicks from 9. When they don't get any go forward with inside their own 40, you'll get balls kicked back to you. So I think on the Lions side, I'd be trying to pin them back into their half and trying to create a lot of counter-attacking opportunities. The Lions have done well with their counters. I think Keon Horn has been very effective running from the back and he also makes really good decisions. When there's no support, he kicks the ball back, puts it back into their half. But he's a real dangerous runner, and the same with Francis, because he'll be back receiving kicks from the Bulls. So try and create as many opportunities to get the ball close to the 50, run it into the 50, and then you try and keep the ball and play your brand of rugby.
Right, so we've identified the Bulls' offloads as their secret weapon, almost the opportunity. Now, looking at the Lions, what would their opportunity be? How could they break down this Bulls' defense and actually win this game?
I think the one opportunity that I've just thought of is the fact that if the Bulls are trying to stay away from those midfield corridors where the Lions are waiting for the double hits, creating chaos at the tackle, they're going to want to get the ball into the wide edges. And what happens sometimes is teams tend to just play 2 or 3 yards deeper to ensure that they can get the ball into those wide edges. And if the Lions can pounce on that, get off the line, prevent the ball from getting to the outside with high edge, and make the tackle 10, 15 meters behind the advantage line, I think that the Bulls might have to revert back to plan A, which is more direct, which will suit the Lions' type of defense style.
Where would you say the Bulls' weak spot is, for example? Specifically, is it in the backs, in the fronts, in the forwards? What would you say you focus on attacking? I heard what you said just now, but there must be some sort of a weak link in the armor, a weak link in the chain, or a chink in the armor. That's the right word. Where would you probe?
I think also don't go and try and brush your ego and try and be physical and try and run over players from the start. I think both teams need to be really smart with their physicality. Don't overplay in areas where you might concede turnovers and penalties, and then you're going to be defending mauls. So that part between the two tens, you need some double positives there. So if you're kicking a box kick and the ruck's in there, if you're not contesting, or if you don't get it back from the contest, then that next breakdown needs to be chaos, needs to be won from there. If you don't win it, the next ruck from there needs to be a really hard line speed, get onto them, and one of those actions might get you a reward. But if you're going to lose the battle between the two tens, you're going to be defending mauls, and on the day, if they get those maul plays right, or the kicks are going close into the 5, you're gonna be in for a long one. So to get back to your question, I think pretty similar to what the Bulls have got to do to the Lions is don't play into those narrow channels for too many times. You've got to send some form of ball carry in there to try and commit a lot of defenders and then play from there. But I think the Bulls' structured defense can hold for a while. So I think the Lions kicking game might just be the difference for them on the day.
You mentioned now the battle of the tens, and that's a big problem for the Bulls. Johan Goosen is out yet again with another knee injury. Jake called it, he's got crystal knees. Apparently they break for nothing. So he's out. What's left is Boeta Chamberlain. And Jake mentioned that he might be tempted or forced to play Willie Leroux at 10. What's your thinking on that?
I think Willie can do it. I think you want Willie to go into test match mode and not into Cape Town tens mode where you're running everything because people they're expecting fireworks for year 10. You got to do the basics right first. Get your team playing in the right areas. Win the battles between the two tens, so you're not getting double negative actions and defending mauls in your own 22, but you're working forward and playing into their 22. So I think Willie can do it, but I think the Lions will see that as an opportunity. It's not a regular 10, and that does make a difference in that position.
Well, he played 10 in Japan when he was there, didn't he?
I think the amount of time Willie gets the ball at 10, he's playing 10 anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right. All right, now let's talk about set pieces. I want to ask you this question. Is there any better scrum in the URC at the moment than the Bulls?
Well, if there is, they're hiding it really well. It's something. It's so dominant that I think the refs sometimes feel uncomfortable with what they see, and it's kind of like this can't be happening again. Like, it just feels too one-sided. But it's an unbelievably dominant scrum, and there's a lot of opportunities that arise from it. The Bulls get to have two bites at the cherry off the scrums because they keep getting advantage, and that makes a difference.
And do you think it's maybe because Stade Francais was so bad, or was it because the Bulls are getting so good at it? I mean, Wilco just destroyed that poor French proper, so I can't remember his name just now. But the reason I'm asking you this, the Lions are not that bad themselves in terms of scrum. Asenati Klabakani is, he's right up there. He's also as good as tight head as maybe as Wilco, maybe not that good, but he's still a proper scrummer. So do you think there's a big battle brewing there? And do you think the Lions can actually get on top or at least equal the Bulls scrum?
Definitely. What I'm just hoping is that the ref doesn't go into the game with this preconceived idea that the Bulls scrum is just so dominant after what he saw last week. So Stade Francais didn't send their best team, and the Bulls are on an upward curve with their scrums. And the combination of those two things together just made for a lot of attacking opportunities, advantage plays, penalties, etc. I think the Lions will be a different challenge, and they'll get their fair share of penalties as well. I'm pretty sure of that.
Right. The other part of set pieces, of course, is the lineouts. Now, here's another aspect of the game where the Bulls are not firing all cylinders. When Ruan Okeer was there, they did well. When he went off, Ak came on as a hooker, things deteriorated, but they only had a 75% success rate. The Lions, on the other hand, they seem to be doing pretty well in the lineouts. Not perfect, but better than the Bulls. Which of those two teams do you think has got the upper hand in lineouts?
At the moment, the Lions are definitely performing better at line-out time, and they'd be licking their lips to defend the Bulls line-out, disrupting and not giving them that platform to play off, not giving them the mauls. Their discipline. If their discipline holds up, they disrupt a couple of lineouts, it could be a really good day out for the Lions. The flip side of that coin is the Bulls are due for a really good lineout showing. And against the Lions, especially their set piece defense, it's tough to crack from the start. They're going to need a really good platform to get some go forward and get some momentum for those first three phases.
The interesting thing about this game the Lions played last week against the Dragons, they whooped them and they were in full flight. I mean, they scored how many tries? Is that a complete performance? Was it because they're very good, or they were good on the day, or the Dragons were that bad? Can we read anything into that victory specifically from a Lions point of view?
I think you can read into it, and don't read too much into it. I think the Dragons had a 65% tackle completion on the day. But, being a defense coach at the moment myself, that sometimes doesn't tell the true story about the defense, other than, you didn't make your tackles. But the attack was just so difficult to stop. The sides they chose to play to didn't have the numbers, so you can't make those tackles. The ball was so quick, you can't get set. I think with the way the Lions kept the ball alive and the fact that they were looking to really attack and keep that attacking mindset, I think what you can read into it is if once that train starts going, that Lions attacking train is really difficult to stop.
So on the same subject, let's ask the same question about the Bulls. against the weekend start Francais, there were lots of problems with the Bulls. They were a very good team getting into the 22, but they couldn't convert. 18 entries, I think, they only scored 3 times. You and Harry had several discussions about how to fix it. The one thing that we did notice, for example, they had more taps and goes, fewer mauls. Do you think the Bulls, did that victory convince you? Did they manage to sort their problems out, or was it simply a flash in the pan, a bit of flash in the pan, a bit of an uptick, not really too much, you can't read too much into it?
That performance was always on the card somewhere. They've got that. That's the way they can attack. And maybe this is the one to just tick, push them over the edge and show that we can defend like this. So there's no reason we can't give this showing every week. Obviously, weekend side, but you still need to put that score on the board. You still need to score those tries. You still need to make an average team look average, and that's what they did. That's exactly what the Lions did. So it's interesting that both of these teams are coming off a really good win. The confidence should be up, but I think they know that this weekend will be a lot different.
Now, you're a dyed-in-the-wool Lions supporter as much as I am a dyed-in-the-wool Bulls supporter, so we're going to be opposites this weekend. Looking at the Lions now, as a Lions supporter, which players do you think are key this weekend to the Lions, beating the Bulls and beating them properly? Which players would you identify?
The front row, no doubt, they're gonna have a tough challenge on the day. I think Frankie Horn is going to be. He's been playing fantastic rugby. The halves, Krappies and Francis, I think Van der Berg's been playing really good rugby, and I think when they get into that quick ball situation, he's a real threat. And then the back three, if they get counter-attacking opportunities, how will they look after those opportunities? And there's 1 or 2 scenarios. They go down 14-zip in the first 10 minutes, and the Lions throw caution to the wind, and they beat the Bulls 35-29. Something like that. But it's got to come from the back. I think their counter attack is something that they can really focus on. They know they're going to get the kicks back, force those kicks from the places that you want them, and then make good decisions from the back.
All right. Again, on the Bulls side, players that you should keep an eye on, going to be key to the Bulls game.
Front row, they'll have a long day. I think the way Lowe and Hanekom's playing at the moment, Cameron's, it's like having 16 players on the field the way Cameron's playing. And with Elrich, he just does so much dirty work and gets stuck in. They give him the ball, there's no shape, they've lost their shape completely. And there's one man that just says, give it to me, I'll get the shape back, runs it up, gets gain line, presents the ball. So I think that combination is going to be a player that I think is knocking on a Springbok jersey door is Embrose Papier. His decision making at ruck time, the quickness he plays with, he's a real threat around the rucks. His passing's good. I think his time, he might just get another chance. I'm not sure in whose place, but I think the way he plays, he deserves another chance. And then obviously, who's going to play 10? Is it going to be Chamberlain? Is Jacob van der Walt, is he still injured?
I don't know. The Bulls. I read an article today. The Bulls are notorious for not talking about the injuries. So I don't know. Nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, I think who's going to play 10 for them, and what is he going to be told to do? Is he going to be told play in their half? Is he going to be told let's try and replicate the Stade Francais game? That's going to be the key.
Yeah. Now, the exciting. There's a couple of exciting matchups here. The first one is, of course, Ruan Venter versus Elrich Lowe. Ruan had a storm of a game last week for the Lions, but Elrich has been dependable, and Harry calls him a warhorse. He just never stops working. You just mentioned about the dirty work that he gets to. That's an interesting matchup. How do you compare those two, and which one of the two do you think will maybe get the upper hand, just as a matter of interest?
I think the player who gets the upper hand on the day is the player that doesn't make the game too big. It goes in, just focuses on his job, doesn't make it about beating the other player, doesn't make it about the social media uh, matchups that they're trying to build this up, and it's always going to happen. But I think the player that usually comes up trumps in these are the ones that just go about their business and do what they do every week.
The other one that I'm excited to look to see is Cameron Hanekom versus Frankie Horn. Now, you just mentioned Hanekom is so good that it's actually like an extra player on the field. But Frankie Horn has been knocking on the Springbok door a bit, and people have been saying that he's been unlucky not to get a call up. Different styles, though. What do you expect from that matchup?
Yes, it's different styles, but it feels like it's the same outcome. They know where the try line is, and they Frankie, that one step he gave on the weekend, I think there's a lot of wings that will have a look at that and go, I'd like to be able to do that. So that's going to be a good matchup. Although I don't think within the setup at the moment there'll be a real face off between the two, but I think it's going to be about contributions. You know, who's going to be coming around the corner most, who's going to be running in the wide channels the most, who's going to be getting the most offloads away, who's going to make the most tackles, getting onto rucks, getting onto jackals, because that's one thing that Cameron does really well. He tends to contribute in a lot of different areas of the game.
All right. Give me your prediction. I know you're going to say the Lions win, but the Lions are going to win. Be realistic. What do you think? What do you think the scoreline is going to be? Is it going to be a high-scoring game, lots of tries, or very tight, very close? Typical derby, lots of injuries afterwards because nobody gives an inch. What are you expecting?
Yeah, in full disclosure, that's why I stopped playing Super Brew, because I could never go against the Lions. So I'd sometimes ruin a yellow cap weekend because I can't go against the Lions. So you're 100% right. I'll definitely back the Lions. I think it'll be a mid-range, let's say a 30-24, 30-26 type game. It'll be really physical, and there'll definitely be some form of injuries afterwards, especially if the way the matchups are set for the weekend. But yeah, here's hoping for that 30-26 win for the Lions.
Mm. I'm sorry. I think it's going to be a bit of a bigger victory for the Bulls. 30 for the Bulls, but much, probably about 15 or so for the Lions. I think the Bulls are going to win this one convincingly. I want to just ask you, the fact that they're playing at Ellis Park, Emirates Park, how much of a role does that really play? I don't know how full the stadium is going to be in the likes, but is there any advantage really to playing against a local side at your home ground? And I want to ask you that because all the South African sides are going to pretty much be doing derbies until the middle of March, except the Stormers playing Leinster this weekend, and I think the Sharks are playing Cardiff. How much of an advantage is the home ground actually? You know, especially Ellis Park, that's not going to have that many people. There's a bit of an echoey. There's not many supporters. Maybe there are. I wouldn't know. But do you think that will count in their favor?
You'd have to think so. It's just the familiarity. You see it as your house, and you want to protect whatever's in there. So there has to be some form of advantage. 10 minutes to go, you're up by 3 or down by 3. You need to go and score. It just feels easier when you're at home, or yeah, the familiarity definitely has to give you some form of advantage. I do think, though, that the Bulls supporter are a bit more hostile than the Ellis Park supporters. So I'm happy that this game's at Ellis Park.
Well, it's going to be at Loftus pretty soon because, like I said, the Bulls are playing only local sides till the middle of March. So it's the Lions and the Stormers and the Sharks. They all get it in. Then the Lions again at Loftus. It's going to be interesting. I wanted to ask you, do you think the Bulls are in better shape than we're giving them credit for, especially in terms of the URC now crashing out of the Champions Cup and now qualifying for the Challenge Cup? But are the Bulls in a better position than we give them credit for?
And they've showed glimpses of really good rugby within the season, and they put together a good showing against Stade Francais. So the weekend will probably tell us more. I still feel that the Bulls are not as in dire straits as a lot of people think. I think they've showed a lot of at a lot of times where they've put together good sequences of play, and maybe a skill set error cost you or decision making error cost you, but at some point those start turning into rewards, and you get the try, or you do get the penalty. But I'm not convinced that they are in as deep trouble as some people think.
Right. You and I are going to be having a discussion directly after the game. So a quick reaction from you. Hopefully you're going to be sad. I'm going to be happy, but we'll see when it comes around. So we'll post details about that. So after the game, we'll post an immediate reaction from André. So watch out for that. So André, I want to just briefly talk to you quickly about the Stormers traveling to Leinster. Now, we saw Leinster last weekend against Bath. Bath is the #1 team in the Premiership. Yes, they got a red card towards the end, and yes, they were ahead at half-time. But Leinster is an imposing team, and that team is just firing on all cylinders. How impressive was that victory? And if you were the Stormers, would you even bother pitching up almost this weekend?
You have to. That's the challenge. That's in this competition, if you don't do your homework, if you don't put the work in the week, and you don't pitch on the day, any team can beat any team. If you look at the form book at the moment, Leinster's a difficult team to beat. Although they've said that Jukskei has said that their attack has taken a bit of a backseat to the defense, and they don't want to be known as a defensive team. So since that's been said, now they'll probably focus and have an improvement in their attack as well. So I think it's going to be tough for the Stormers. I think it's going to be a game where you want to take your chances early, get a bit of scoreboard pressure, and then really rely, because the Stormers' defense is something that they can defend a score once they get it. They can defend for long ranges as well. There's some really good strategy that goes into it. They make good decision come ruck time. So if they can get a bit of a score, not that the Leinster defense is anything to break down or easy to break down. So, but I think you're going to have to take your chances early.
The one good thing for the Stormers is that most of the Leinster team are probably going to be in the Irish camp, preparing for the Six Nations. They're probably going to end up playing against a B side or a second string side. That helps already. I wanted to ask you though, these games where you're the underdog, do you as a rugby player cherish that or relish the challenge, or do you look forward to it, or are you a bit wary? I'm just asking about the mindset. I'm just thinking about how do you guys approach it? I'm probably going to lose this one. Difficult to motivate yourself.
That's where the culture and the environment that you're in, the coaching staff, even if there's a feeling that you are going to lose this game, as the coach, if you can just get your players to believe that you can win it, you've done 80% of your job. Because at least they're walking onto the pitch believing they can win this game. And like I said, on the day, ref has a bit of an off day. The opposition has a bit of an off day. There's wind, there's rain. Anything can happen. Just stay in the fight. And when it comes to players and mindsets, that's where the good players are. The divide between good and great comes in, because good players will accept the loss even before they walk onto the pitch, but they'll still play well. Whereas great players won't accept the loss, and they'll play great, and they'll make a difference, and they might just win it for you.
All right. Thank you. That was quite interesting. So we'll have a chat on Saturday after the match. I'm looking forward to it. I hope that I'm correct and you're wrong, but we'll see. Thanks, André.
It'll be good to go to Loftus 1-0 up.
In your dreams.
It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Welman, only on MEGAFOON Rugby.